Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Massive thanks to the authors, Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed for allowing me to adapt their awesome story. Follow the link in the description to check out more of their works. Today we will be listening to the 29th part of What If Deku Had Both One for All and All for One. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who stuck around during my time away recently. Let's take that positive energy and shoot for the stars, eh? Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 57, Sir Nightai. Chapter by Roxi2Star. Morning came, and Izuku and Shoto woke up together. Both of them got dressed before heading down to the common area. Kikin was up and dressed looking annoyed as he waited by the door. Shinsu was also awake, sipping on a cup of coffee. "Mornin'," he said to them. Shoto waved and grabbed a granola bar, and kissed Izuku. "I'll see you tonight," he said. "Good luck with Sir Nightai." Izuku smiled, blushing mildly. "Thanks. You and Kikin be careful. I hope the extra lessons go okay," he said. His boyfriend gave a curt nod, waved to Shinsu, and left the kitchen. He and Kikin left together, Kikin grumbling the whole time. Izuku was certain he could hear Kikin yelling something about walking behind him. He snorted lightly. "Here Mito," Shinsu said, passing a cup of coffee towards him. "So, Sir Nightai?" "Yet." Izuku grinned. "He was All Might's sidekick, but I'm sure you know that." Shinsu nodded. "Apparently he asked to see you specifically. Which is super cool and exciting. I had to beg Tosh for an introduction and I got relegated to Togata-senpai." He sighed and took a long drink of his coffee. "I'm so nervous. I hope he'll like me." Shinsu rubbed his back soothingly. "I'm sure he'll adore you," he said. "You're the one here with the brightest future after all." Izuku blinked. "Hey? What does that mean?" He tilted his head. "You're joking, right? Midoriya, you know everyone in the class has their eyes on you, right? Like, you're the one everyone follows. The standard. I mean, I'm always watching you. So it stands to reason that of all of us, you're the one who's gonna go the farthest. Don't tell Bakugo, but like, Izuku, you're like, destined to be the next #1 hero, you know that, right?" Tears sprang into his eyes. Izuku threw his arms around Shinsu, burying his face into his chest. Shinsu-kun," he wailed. "That's the sweetest thing anyone has ever said." He pulled back and grabbed him by the face. "You're gonna be such an amazing hero, Shinsu-kun. I know you're shooting for underground work and you're gonna be so good at it. You're already such a great hero. You're my hero. I mean, you did actually save me and my dad's lives." Shinsu's eyes looked misty. "Damn it, Mito, you can't just..." He grabbed Izuku by the waist and hugged him tightly. "You're one my absolute best friends," he mumbled. "Let's go get this fucking work study." Izuku cried. "You and me. We're gonna make Sir Nightai take us on if it's the last thing we do." "This is the Sir Nightai agency," Togata said with a flourish. The three of them stood in front of the door. Izuku and Shinsu looked up at it, both of them with clear apprehension on their faces. "Oh come on guys," he said and got between them, throwing an arm around both of their shoulders. "Look, Sir might seem like a tough guy, but he's got something of a secret soft side." Shinsu and Izuku both looked up at him. "Hey, really?" Izuku asked. "He always seemed sort of strict and cold to me. Even in videos his gaze always gave me the shivers." "Oh no, he's definitely strict and cold, but the truth is there's one thing that can always impress Sir: humor. If you make him laugh or smile at least once, he'll take you on, no question." Togata said. "I think he really respects that in heroes. Which makes sense. If you can make victims smile or laugh while you're saving them, you're helping them even more." Izuku nodded thoughtfully. "I do want to make people smile. I'm just not that funny. Maybe I could think of a joke or..." Shinsu snorted. "I dunno man, you're charming in your own way. I wouldn't think too hard about it. One of your gifts is the ability to melt the hearts of icy guys. It worked on me, and it definitely worked on Roki." He smiled at him softly. "Just be yourself." He sighed. "Yeah, but I'm trying to impress Sir Nightai, not be his friend." Togata hummed and removed his arms. "Well, if Shinsu-kun here thinks you being you will be enough, I think you should go for it." "Okay," Izuku said and plastered on the trademark Midoriya smile. "I can do this. That's the spirit." Togata cried. "Come along my little cowherha. Let's go get you some work studies." Mirai sat at his desk, reading through the files on it. Two of them sat face open. The first of Shinsu Hitachi. a general education student who managed to get transferred into the hero class. His quirk, mind control, on paper, is a villain's quirk. But Mirai saw it for its true potential. Shinsu Hitachi wasn't going to be the next symbol of peace, no, Mirai had his sights on Mirio for that. However, Shinsu was still an important part of the future. He had humor and that was enough to help him. To spur him forward. The other file, he was less sure about. A base part of him wanted to kick Midoriya Izuku out as soon as he stepped foot into the room. He was All Might's chosen successor. That was clear to anyone who saw him who knew the secret about One for All. The power he'd displayed at the sports festival a few months ago was proof enough. He'd been thoroughly unimpressed. He'd been defeated by Endeavor's son. Ugh, Endeavor was a hero Mirai had no respect for. The man was all power, no humor. Unfitting for the #1 spot. He gave a shudder at what the world might become if he remained there. So for him to be defeated by his child was not a good sign for Midoriya Izuku. He looked over his file again. He'd gotten the top spot on UA's entrance exam, his grades were above average putting him in the top 5 of his class, and he'd passed his provisional license exam with a fantastic score. On paper, he seemed like an excellent choice. But Mirai knew in his heart that Mirio was a far better person. He was also fairly certain All Might had made his choice for emotional reasons, not logical ones. Mirai knew that because of Midoriya Hisashi. When he'd first learned about Midoriya Izuku at the sports festival, he'd only been mildly unimpressed. Then, at Common Award, All Might had shocked the world again when he grabbed the unknown hero and kissed him passionately on live television. The memory of that made his blood boil. It wasn't long until the whole story came out. All Might had been in love with Midoriya Hisashi. It was clear to Mirai the decision to give Midoriya Izuku One for All was at least somewhat a bid for the attention and affections of Midoriya Hisashi. So far everything Midoriya Izuku has done has only furthered this line of thought. Having been captured or almost captured by some villain on 4 separate occasions. He'd also read in his file that Midoriya had just been on a 3-day house arrest. He was probably quite rough with others based on how he performed in the sports festival. Mirai was pulled from his musing as his office door burst open. Mirio came in first. "Hey sir. I got those first years," he said and stood aside to allow them in. Shinsu was the first to follow. He gave a small bow. "Hi. I'm Shinsu Hitachi, I heard you wanted to meet me," he said, his voice a bit awkward. Mirai found it endearing in a way. Midoriya was next. He took a confident step into his office. "Hello," he said, "I'm Midoriya Izuku." He gave a curt bow. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." He stood back up and offered Mirai a blinding smile. "Oh. Well, that was certainly unexpected." The smile had taken him off guard. But that wasn't all. He had a sort of magnetizing presence. In photos, he looked plain, but in person, he sort of had a glimmer about him. A soft glow. He even had a good smell. Sort of like apples. It was like the boy simply pulled him in. A base part of him briefly considered this felt almost unnatural. Then again perhaps, there was something worth examining here. "Yes," he said and stood. "Shinsu, I'll start with you. I'd like to offer you a place at my agency for a work study." Shinsu blinked. Yeah okay but..." He rubbed the back of his head. "I gotta ask, why me? I'm just some nobody from General Ed." Before Mirai could open his mouth, Midoriya beat him to it. "You're not a nobody, Shinsu-kun." He grabbed Shinsu's hands in his own scarred ones. "You're a great hero. There's a lot of reasons Sir Nitai should want you. You're so talented with your quirk, you've been working super hard and..." "Thank you Midoriya," Mirai cut him off. Midoriya blushed, dropping Shinsu's hands and averting his eyes. He placed his hands behind his back and bowed his head. Cute. Wait, no damn it. He was supposed to dislike this child. "Shinsu, I asked you here for a very simple reason." He pulled his phone from his pocket and pulled up the video that had captured his attention a few days ago. He let it play. "Great? It's more than great, bucko. I'm on the top of the goddamn world. I'm high and my drug is life. I'm getting married, I'm the blushing bride and my groom is happiness. Charge bolt, I'm about one neuron shooting my brain up with serotonin away from doing a 45-minute air guitar solo. I get so save people, charge bolt. I get to save people while dressed up like a ninja. Do you know how freaking tight that is, pal? Friend, buddy, bucko, charge bolt." I'm a hero now. It's about to be baby's first rescue mission. Charge bolt. Shinso kept up the rambling, his face growing more and more deranged. I feel like puppies are licking my face 24/7. I feel like what Disneyland is. Charge bolt, my mom could die and this still might be the best day of my life. That's a lie. I love my mom, Charge bolt. Shinso and Midoriya both stared at the phone. Jaws open. Midoriya turned to Shinso and shook his shoulder hard. See? I told you. I said that it was great exposure. Denki's video. Shinso breathed. I'm gonna buy that guy dinner. Wait. So you want me because I had a TikTok go viral? Mirai shook his head. I want you because you're funny, he said in a deadpan. You made me laugh. You clearly made a lot of people laugh. Beyond that, it's the way you speak so highly of saving people. That you get to help people. It's the mindset of a true hero. That's why I want you to do your work study with me, Shinso Hitachi. Shinso seemed dumbstruck. Midoriya was still cheering for him. It was clear they were friends. Shinso began. I accept. Excellent. Mirio, take Shinso out of here. I'd like to speak with Midoriya alone, Mirai instructed before sitting back at his desk. Mirio nodded and motioned for Shinso to follow. Instead, Shinso grabbed Midoriya by the shoulders. Good luck, he said and knocked their foreheads together. We're gonna do this together. Midoriya nodded. Thanks Shinso-kun. I'll see you on the other side. With that, they parted. Shinso and Mirio left, leaving just himself and Midoriya in the room. Midoriya turned to him and smiled once more. It wasn't as blinding, more soft. Mirai had to push back the wave of fondness. I'm going to ask for you to please allow me to do my work study with you as well. You're the chosen user of One for All, Mirai said simply. I'm aware. He nodded. Right. Well, I know working with you would help me. I need to get stronger. All Might can't do hero work anymore and the world needs someone to take that burden on. Being the symbol of peace. He believes I can do it. So I'm going to, but I need your help. Mirai drummed his fingers along the desk. I'm aware of what you gain by working here, but what do I gain from taking you on? He asked. Midoriya paused, his smile faltering. Mirai didn't need to touch him and activate his quirk to know the boy would have nothing to say in All Might, he said simply. What? Mirai asked. Midoriya's smile returned. This time it was a bit more sly. It was. Dare Mirai say, a smirk. The little shit. His wide green eyes flicked around the All Might merch-adorned room. You miss him, right? I mean, it's clear you love him. I see that 10th anniversary poster. I've been begging Tosh to help me get one, but he can't even get a hand on one anymore. It's clear you admire him. But he won't talk to you. I asked him for an introduction first, but he said he couldn't face you. Meaning he wants to but feels like he can't. You still have all his merch, and Togata-senpai said if All Might introduced me you'd take me on no problem, so you still respect him a lot and want him in your life. Am I wrong? Mirai opened his mouth to speak, but Midoriya cut him off. So, you want All Might back in your life? He wants you back in his life. But you're both being stubborn for some reason. If I'm working with you, and I see Tosh all the time, I can slowly help rebuild your relationship as a middleman. I'm pretty good at it too. I talked Tosh into going after my dad when it was clear he wanted to. I've got a few other similar projects right now. It was a dead-on deduction. Midoriya was smart. However, do you honestly think a child could repair a relationship that has been torn so deeply that? Yeah, Midoriya said simply. It'll be tough, but I can do it. He smiled again. He's my stepdad. I'll just talk to him, and I think eventually I can talk him around to coming by. I don't know what happened between the two of you, but it's obvious you still care about each other. He'll eventually let up. Especially if I get Dad to help me. At the mention of his father, Mirai bristled slightly. It clearly doesn't go unnoticed by Midoriya. Oh, he said softly. Is that the situation? You have no clue about the situation. Mirai snapped. What that man is doing to himself. He sighed. All Might picked you, and I still can't help but think he picked wrong. One for All should have gone to Mirio. It's who I wanted to take on the mantle. That made the smirk fall from Midoriya's face. Oh, he said softly. Yet Ogata-senpai is a really wonderful person. He's worked so hard to get where he is. He turned back to Mirai. He'd have been a really good choice. Mirai could feel the but coming. But, it's not your choice. All Might saw something in me. And I respect him enough to at least try and live up to the expectations he's put on me. So once again, I need your help. He sighed. The only thing I can offer in return is to try and help you and All Might repair your relationship. Mirai hummed in thought. Why do you think All Might chose you? He asked finally. Oh. Midoriya blushed. Well, it was a little while ago. I was coming home from middle school and Toshinori wanted to meet me on my way home and... Mirai raised his eyebrows. Just how long have you and All Might known each other? He'd assumed it had only been from the start of the school year. Since I was 10, he said. Well, I was practically 11 the first time we met. But I didn't get one for all until I was 14. So I've only had it for about a year and a half. So... Midoriya Izuku had been the chosen successor. No, he'd had the quirk longer than Mirai even knew Mirio. All that time, and here Midoriya Izuku was, hiding away. But anyway. He texted me when I got out of school to meet up, and when I went to see him we were attacked by some small-time villain. At the time I didn't know he was All Might. He was just Yagi-san to me then. I thought he was quirkless. The villain attacked him first and I pushed Tosh out of the way. After that, he saved me, and offered me one for all. He nodded along. A very interesting tale. He was shocked All Might had known the boy for so long. He must have gotten a very good sense for his personality. Mirai had to admit there was something about this kid. What about the quirk you were born with? He asked. Is it that shield ability? Midoriya squeaked at the mention of his original quirk. Well, my quirk is he rubbed the back of his head. Complicated. And dangerous. I'm afraid I can't tell you about it without talking to Tosh and my dad first. That is if you even take me on at all. Mirai grabbed the paper for the work study and stamped it here, he said, and pushed the paper over towards him. Midoriya blinked and grabbed it, holding it up. I still don't think you are the proper person to inherit one for all. But I will train you. Either you'll prove me wrong, or you'll see that Mirio is the proper person to take the mantle, and he'll become the 10th user. The boy frowned. Okay, he said, do you really want to know about my quirk that badly or? Oh no, Mirai said, returning to his work. I knew I was going to take you on as soon as you smiled. He glanced back at him. You're a dim light, Midoriya Izuku. But the world needs a dazzling one, he said. I haven't checked your future, so we'll see what comes to pass, together. Now get out of here. I expect to hear from All Might sometime soon. Midoriya gave a deep bow, his smile back, in full force. Mirai had to fight the urge to squint. Sir Nitai wanted to break his spirit. Like hell was that happening. Still. He had a work study. That was enough for him. He'd elected to not share Sir Nitai's reasons with Shinsu. This was a wonderful opportunity and he didn't want to upset his friend or make him dislike their new boss. No, the battle of wills would stay between himself and Nitai. So instead, he celebrated. We did it! Izuku yelled as the door into the dorms opened. The classmates who were nearby looked in their direction. Izuku and Shinsu ran into the room, both of them wearing massive smiles. Shinsu-kun and I are doing our work studies with Sir Nitai. Kaminari looked up from his spot on the couch. He smiled brightly and ran right to Shinsu. Hitachi, that's so awesome. He cheered. It's thanks to you, Shinsu said, grabbing Kaminari by the shoulders. Both of their faces flushed deeply. That stupid TikTok got Nitai's attention. You're the reason I got the work study. He pulled Kaminari in for a hug, leaning his head into Kaminari's blonde hair. Thank you so much, Denki. Deku-kun. Okako cried and threw herself into his arms. He scooped her up with a twirl, their feet leaving the ground in excitement. That's so cool. Su-chan and I got work studies too. We're doing ours with Hado-senpai and Ryukyu. He laughed as they floated the number 9 hero. He asked, Okako, that's amazing. He hugged her tighter. We gotta celebrate. Kiri and Tokoyama-kun got work studies too, Kaminari said. They're working with Fat Gum and Hawks, which is like insane. He cried. 6 of us got work studies. Izuku asked, this is amazing. We gotta do something. He gently landed them back on the ground. Where's Ashido-san? We need to have a party or something, this is way too cool. Kaminari pulled himself from Shinsu's embrace. Don't you worry guys. I'm on it. Me and Mina are gonna put something rockin' together. We'll do karaoke. And Sato can bake a cake. I think Zero has some board games or something too. He grinned. Oh man, this is gonna be great. He ran from the room, all the while yelling Mina. Mina, where are you? I need help. Izuku chuckled, so, I guess Shoto and Kikan aren't back yet? He asked, looking around. No, I don't think they'll be back until late, Okako said. I was texting Todoroki-kun earlier when he was on break. She pulled her phone out. Sounds like they're really putting them through some hard work. At least they'll be back in time for the party then, Izuku said, if they even have the energy to hang out. Knowing Kikan, he'll just go to bed at 8 like normal. Shoto might try and stay up, but if he gets too sleepy I'll put him to bed. Okako rolled her eyes with a smile. You two are too much. It's like you're married. He flushed, a happy feeling rolled in his gut at the thought a little yet. He smiled. I'd get married to Shoto. If it's anything like our lives now, I'd be more than happy with that. Married pro heroes. He could picture it in his head. Coming home to Shoto in a shared home. They'd make each other food, and kiss on their couch. In the mornings they'd wake up together and go to work. Domestic bliss. Can't wait for you two to have your white picket fence dream and 2.5 children, Shinso said with a smirk. Aw, no kids, Izuku said hurriedly. Really? Okako asked. I always thought you were good with kids. You'd make a great dad someday. Izuku rubbed the back of his head. I dunno. It's less about being a good or a bad dad and more. Well, I'm never having a biological child at least. His voice fell to a soft whisper so only they could hear. No one deserves this quirk. Shinso and Okako nodded, their eyes wide. Plus I'm aiming for the top spot. So is Shoto. If we do end up married we'll likely be way too busy for kids. There's a reason not many pro heroes have families. Okako sighed. Yeah, I guess you're right. It's hard to have a normal life when you're a hero. Might be easier for me, since I'm shooting for underground work. Easier to take time off since there's no public demand at least, Shinso said with a shrug. Let's just focus on the good stuff from today, Izuku said. We have work studies. Yet. Izuku laughed hard as he watched Shinso and Kaminari attempt to sing into each other's faces. Neither had all too bad of a voice, but then again they weren't exactly trying to sing very well either. Instead just yelling the lyrics of the cheesy love song they picked to sing. He sat on the couch, sandwiched between Ida and Okako, an empty paper plate at his feet with the crumbs from the cake Sato had been so kind to bake. Boo! Jiro called as the song finished. You suck, Denki. Kaminari grinned. Aw, thanks, Kyakya. He said with a wink before turning to Shinso. So when do we go on tour, Hitachi? After my work study, Shinso said with a cheeky grin. Who's next? Okako shot up. Oh. Deku-kun, sing with me. She cried and grabbed his arm. I can't sing. Izuku said, his face turning pinker by the moment. Karaoke isn't about sounding good, Kirishima said. It's about sounding bad, together. Besides, you heard me earlier. Screeching noises. So just get up there, man. We're not gonna judge you. Okako turned on him and shot him with her big brown puppy dog eyes. His heart clenched. Please, Deku-kun. She begged. He sighed in defeat. Fine, okay. I'll do it. He stood up and let her drag him to the microphone stands Jiro had provided. What are we singing? She hummed and approached the laptop they had plugged into the TV before typing in another cheesy love song. As most duets suited for karaoke were. It's in English, that okay? I'm fluent in English, Okako, he said. She hit play and the song began. He knew it, not super well, but he was familiar enough to follow along. He put the mic to his lips, attempting to ignore his classmates watching him as he sang. He was very pointedly not looking at anyone as he sang his part. Okako nearly missed her cue. Izuku glanced at her only to find she was watching him, her eyes wide. She sang her part but kept glancing back at Izuku. No one was talking, just listening to them. It was his turn again and he sang. It was kind of fun. The song ended pretty quickly, and Izuku put his mic back on the stand. That was fun, I'm glad you talked me into that. Deku-kun, she started but was cut off by Jiro of all people. What the crap, Midoriya? She asked. Where the hell did you get a voice from? Izuku flushed. Oh, I mean, he stammered. I'm not really a singer, he said, just was having fun and... Bun, I didn't know you could sing. Shoto was standing in the room. He had his arms crossed over his chest, and his face and forearms were covered in bruises and bandages. I mean, I knew you could a little but... Shao-chan. Izuku cried, running right to him. All thought of karaoke out of his head. What happened to you? You look like you got tossed through a shredder. Xiaodo looked down at himself. Oh, this. Yes, they had us doing some pretty intense training. They had me sparring against Yairishi. We're on friendlier terms, or he keeps trying to say we are. You should see him. He glanced around. What are we celebrating? Izuku sighed, leaning his head onto Xiaodo's shoulder. I'm glad you're okay. Had me spooked for a minute. The rest of the group moved on, with Hagekure and Ashido going up to sing together. A bunch of us got into work studies today. Me included. Come on, Sato-kun made cake and we saved you and Kiken slices, he said and led Xiaodo to the kitchen. Where is Kiken? I'm happy for you, Bunny, Xiaodo said softly and pressed a kiss to his temple. Izuku went about getting Xiaodo a slice of cake. He pulled him into the kitchen and put it in front of him at the counter. Bakugo went right to bed. We heard you singing and he said fuck this, I'm going to sleep. He picked up a fork and got a piece. This is good. So, Sir Nightai? He nodded. Yet. He was a bit of a prick. Me and Shinsu are doing our work studies together with him, so I'll at least have him in my corner. I actually have my first day tomorrow. He checked the clock on the microwave. Speaking of, it's getting late. I should probably get to bed. Let me finish my cake. I'll go up with you. Today was exhausting, he said and took another bite. The work is grueling and the company is unbearable, he said. The only tolerable person is Bakugo. I used to not like him either, but after he helped me plan to rescue you I can't help but find him endearing. Izuku giggled. That's Kiken for you. He grabbed another fork and stole a bite of Xiaodo's cake. Yummy. Xiaodo glared lightly. Izuku. This cake is for me. He stole another small bite, making eye contact with Xiaodo as he ate it. Whatcha gonna do about it, tiger? Pout, Xiaodo said before finishing the cake. They cleaned up and walked back past the crowd in the living room. Zero was just finishing up his song. We're going up, Xiaodo said. What? Okako cried. Deku-kun, it's your party too. You're one of the people we're celebrating. Izuku laughed. Sorry, but I gotta be at Sir Nightai's bright and early tomorrow, so I gotta get plenty of sleep. Shinsu groaned. I hate it, but he's right. I should go too. He stood up. Nuakaminari whined, grabbing his hand. Come on Hitachi, one more song please. One more. He sighed in defeat. Izuku chuckled and tugged Xiaodo along. Well, you all have fun, good night. He called. Night. Was chorused back. Interviews, man. Always hated them. I can talk on camera or in front of a crowd no problem, but put me in a conference room with a hiring board and I am a nervous wreck. LMAO. How about you guys? What would you say is scarier? Public speaking or job interviews? Let's discuss down in the comment section below. Also, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. It only takes a second and is a massive help to the channel. Okay, got your comment submitted? Wonderful. Now we can get back to the episode. Chapter 58, Little Girls and Liars. Chapter by Roxi2Star. We're going to be patrolling and monitoring, Sir Nightai began. The five of them stood in a small circle. Izuku, Togata, Shinsu, Sir Nightai, and Bubble Girl. All of them dressed in their hero costumes. I'll take Bubble Girl, and Mirio will take Midoriya and Shinsu. Izuku blinked, monitoring. He asked, what are we monitoring? Bubble Girl fished in her bag for something. We're working on a secret investigation. The Shihasekai, Sir Nightai said. Izuku's blood ran cold. Tuya had said the League had made contact with the Shihasekai. That Shigaraki wanted to fuck them over. And here he was about to become entangled with them. Good. This was going to bring him closer to putting the League of Villains away for good. Their young head Nightai continued, taking the picture Bubble Girl had produced. He turned the image to the three of them. Chisaki Kai. He's been making strange moves lately. That was who had met with the League. The one who'd killed Big Sis Magni. I thought the Yakuza were quiet these days, Shinsu said while taking the photograph. Izuku leaned over to look at it better. Chisaki was almost good looking if it weren't for the plague mask. It's true that they haven't made any big moves in a long time. It seems Chisaki has been recruiting. We've even learned through a verified source that he'd made contact with the League of Villains, Bubble Girl said. Shinsu gasped. Izuku made his eyes widen in fake surprise. Sir Nightai cut in, however, we have no proof of wrongdoing. Our mission today is to gather evidence without attracting their attention, he said. We can't treat them like villains. They're innocent until proven guilty. If you see any of them, do not engage. Do not use your quirks on them. Just report back to me. Yes sir. The three of them chorused. Is it weird I'm nervous? Izuku asked. You're nervous? Shinzo asked. You've done this before. This is my first time doing real patrolling. I've never patrolled either. Togata laughed. You guys didn't do this at your internships? He asked. Too busy taking on villains. I didn't do an official internship, Shinzo said. I was training with Eraserhead, but that was mostly on school grounds. He nudged Togata with his shoulder. In a bit yet. My first outing was the training camp invasion and then Kamino, so it was a real trial by fire. That's crazy. Togata said. What about you, Midoriya-kun? Izuku rubbed the back of his head. I had a run-in with the hero killer at my internship, he said. That was my first night in the field. Then I spent the rest of my internship in the hospital. Then you two have nothing to worry about, Togata said and wrapped an arm around both of their shoulders. We're just patrolling. Sir is the one watching his stronghold. We probably won't even see anything. He grinned. Oh. What are your hero names, by the way? I never asked. He let them go. Shinzo rolled his eyes but smiled. I'm Mind Jack, he said, because of my brainwashing quirk. I'm jacking people's minds, so to speak. Sick. Togata grinned. You can mind control people by having them respond to you verbally, right? Shinzo nodded. What about you, Midoriya-kun? What's your hero name? I'm Deku, Izuku said with a grin. Togata blinked. Isn't that an insult? He asked. Izuku shrugged. It also sounds like I can, which is kind of what I'm going for. A never give up type, remember? He looked up at Togata. What about you, senpai? Oh. He grinned. I go by Lemillion. He flexed his arms with a cheery laugh. Because I don't think it's possible to say I can save everyone, but I can save at least 1 million people. Shinzo and Izuku both grinned widely. That's really cool, Izuku said. Togata was just so cool. In his own dorky way. He was what Izuku wanted to be like. The three of them walked in silence together for a while. But as they passed a dark alleyway, something, or rather someone, rammed right into Izuku's leg. Whoa, he said before catching the little girl who's rammed into him. He leaned down as she'd fallen on her knees. Shinzo and Togata had kept walking, not noticing at first, but quickly turned around. Hey, careful there, he said with a smile. He got a better look at her. White hair and red eyes, just like his father. She had a small horn on her head, and wore a plain white dress. It reminded Izuku of a hospital gown. Her arms and legs were covered in bandages, and she wasn't wearing any shoes. That was a lot of red flags. Whoa, are you okay? He asked her. Pain. Danger sense was lighting up his nose. He looked up, and there in the mouth of the alley, stood the source of his danger. Chisaki Kai. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise for a split second before he forced his face into a neutral mask. Sorry for the trouble my daughter caused you there, hero, he said. His voice was deep and nasal in tone. She tends to get overexcited and run away. No worries, Togata said, approaching Izuku from behind. His voice was still cheerful, but Izuku could see the slight tenseness in his shoulders. Shinzo stood a few feet away holding his mask over his mouth. Their eyes met. Shinzo was freaking out as much as Izuku was. He held the little girl closer. We're the ones who should be apologizing. I like your mask. Chisaki's eyes remained impassive. Yet. I'm sensitive to dirt and dust, he said. I've never seen the three of you before. Are you new? What agency are you working with? Togata laughed. We're just students doing our internships. Getting a feel for everything. These two are all nerves since they haven't been out much. He smiled brightly. Speaking of, we gotta keep moving, you two. Come kiddo, we got places to patrol. Please. The little girl whispered, her small fingers digging into the material of Izuku's hero costume. Don't go. Izuku felt his heart shatter. He clutched her close to his chest. His rabid heart pounding in his ribcage. Shinzo was by his side in a second, kneeling down as well. Your daughter seems very scared, sir, Shinzo said softly. I was just scolding her, Chisaki said. Izuku looked up at Chisaki, his eyes narrowing. With all due respect, sir. Izuku could feel his temper getting the better of him. These bandages are covering a lot of her body. She must be badly injured. She falls a lot. Clumsy kid, he said, his voice growing darker. She's trembling, Izuku said again, his voice more forceful. That's not normal. What are you doing to this little girl? He asked. Togata put a hand on his shoulder but Izuku shrugged it off, standing up and holding her to his chest. Well. Chisaki sighed. Fine. It's a rather embarrassing story and I'd rather not be overheard. Would you follow me into the alley? Shinsu was glaring over his mask at Chisaki. Togata was clearly trying to keep things from escalating, but if escalation was what this asshole wanted, he was going to get it. Izuku would follow him. He'd take his quirk if it meant keeping this girl safe. Heroes, they just don't get the subtleties of a situation. Danger sense flared up again, full force. It nearly made Izuku sway in pain. Chisaki began to remove one of his gloves and the little girl flung herself away from Izuku and ran right to Chisaki's side. She wouldn't look back. Hey. Izuku said, reaching his hand out towards her. Done with your tantrum? Chisaki asked her. She gave a curt nod. Sorry, she's always like this. Well, good luck on the job, he said, and he and the girl disappeared into the alleyway. Izuku wanted to chase after them but Togata pulled him back. Careful, he said quietly. That guy is no joke. We should regroup with Sir and tell him. We don't want to make him too suspicious or he'll just vanish deeper with her. He wanted to cry. But he started. Mito, he's right, Shinsu said softly, pulling the mask down from his face. I don't think we could take that guy. Besides, we don't have proof anything is wrong. A whole lot of red flags, but those don't hold up in court. Midoriya-kun, I feel the same way right now, Togata said. Let's just meet back up with Sir and we'll get back on his trail soon, okay? Izuku took one last longing look down that alley. Chisaki was dangerous. That little girl was in danger. He wanted to help her. But Togata was right. Okay, he said softly. They met back up with Sir Nitai and explained what happened. Sir Nitai just repeated much of what Togata had said at the scene. They were going to have to do this slowly, and carefully. To act too soon would put the little girl in more trouble. Still, it left Izuku with a horrible taste in his mouth. A week passed by. Izuku hadn't been able to focus all week. His mind was so wrapped up in the Shihasekai, Chisaki, and that poor little girl. He knows, logically, that there was nothing he could have done for her at that moment. That legally, Chisaki was untouchable. She'd have to wait until they had proof of wrongdoing. The entire situation made him sick to his stomach. Bun? Shouto asked, standing next to his desk. He had his hair in the half-up half-down look Izuku liked. That was the end of the day bell, and you haven't moved. I'm fine, Izuku mumbled. That's just not true, Shouto said. I wish you wouldn't lie to me like that. He grabbed Izuku's backpack for him. Something happened. You don't have to tell me what. I know you can't always talk about ongoing investigations, but please don't pretend you're fine when I know you aren't. Izuku bit his lip. He stood and took his backpack back and tossed it around his shoulders. I'm sorry, Shouto. He mumbled. Just a lot has been on my mind. I can't go into detail, but I'm fine. I promise. It wasn't just the girl either. Nitai knew about One for All. He wanted Togata to take over. Tosh had to know about that, right? He'd been avoiding talking to him, but he'd also promised Nitai he'd help bridge their relationship. It's nothing I can't handle. Shouto frowned. Okay. He was covered in bandages. He'd had his second extra lesson that weekend. It looked even more dangerous than the first. Izuku didn't want to burden him. Let's go back to the dorm. Actually, Izuku said, I think I need to talk to Toshinori. Oh, Shouto said, disappointment clear on his face. I'll see you later then. He reached over and tucked a piece of hair behind Izuku's ear. Your hair is getting longer. He blushed softly. Yet. I need a haircut. I'll get it handled. Aoyama-kun mentioned he knew how to cut hair, so I'll bug him about it later. He leaned up and kissed Shouto sweetly. I'll see you later. See ya, Bun, he said, and Izuku ran off. He ran right to his father's office. There was usually a small gap between the end of the day and Dad's after-school appointments. He knocked on the door. It's open. His father called from inside. Izuku let himself in. Oh Izu, hey kiddo, Dad said. He was sitting at his desk, with Toshinori sitting across from him. What's going on? I need to talk to Toshinori, he said firmly. Tosh, you knew didn't you? Knew what? Dad asked Tosh. Toshinori sighed. I know a lot of things. About Nightai. He knows about One for All, Izuku said. He had a successor in mind. Togata-senpai. He wanted you to give One for All to Togata, and you knew about that. His fists clenched. Why didn't you tell me? What difference would it make? Toshinori asked. The difference is I wouldn't have been fucking blindsided by it. Izuku yelled. The anger, the disappointment, the rage he'd been containing for the last week was bubbling to the surface. Not all of it was even directed at Toshinori, but he couldn't help forcing all of those feelings onto him. Dad stood. This is news to me as well, he said, but Izuku, watch your mouth. Nightai rejects me as the wielder of One for All, he said. I just don't get why you wouldn't tell me. Is it that you hate him so much? I just don't, he growled, holding his head between his hands. Toshinori, please just be honest with me. Not as a fan, not as your stepson, but as your successor. I have to know the entire situation or I'll lose it. Will you regret asking that? Toshinori asked softly. Dad frowned. Oh, you mean you want to tell him that? Tell me what? Izuku asked. What are you two hiding? God damn it, you always do this. He yelled. Why am I being kept in the dark about so much? Toshinori stood up and crossed the room. He gently placed his long skeletal hands onto Izuku's shoulders. He began, after my fight with All for One. Izuku shuddered. When he injured me, that first time. The fight that made your father, he said. Mirai used his quirk on me. Foresight. His future is absolute. He saw that in the near future, I would die. Izuku's blood ran cold. He knocked his arms off his shoulders and stepped back until he hit the door. Did I? He asked. You knew. He turned to his father. Dad nodded. How could you never tell me? He looked up at Toshinori, his voice small. How could you pursue my dad? I wouldn't have told you to go for it if I knew you were going to die. Dad already lost someone. I lost someone. Izuku, Dad began. I knew about this when he and I got together. He warned me well in advance, but... Stop. Izuku yelled. I didn't get to know. He screamed. I should have been told. I'm 16, not 10. I deserve to have the whole truth. If someone I love is dying, I should know. He was crying. This isn't fair. He sobbed. You're supposed to be here and keep me moving forward. You said you'd make me the best hero. You can't die until that happens. Not before I grow up, and get married. You can't die until you're old and wrinkled. Toshinori smiled at him softly. Izuku, he said. When I first heard his prediction, I accepted it without question. I knew I was going to die in battle. He grabbed Izuku again, but things have changed. Hey. Kamino was my finish line, he said. I was prepared to die for you and Hisashi right then and there. He pulled Izuku closer. But you were there, and you gave Hisashi blood curdle. And Hisashi saved me by using it. His long arms wrapped around his body. I should have died there. So this. It's all new territory. I don't think Mirai has that figured out yet, but fate has changed. It's why I kissed your father. It was the final confirmation I needed. You two make me want to keep moving. I live for the two of you now. He hugged Izuku tightly. Fate could be changed? Tears streamed down his cheeks as he buried his face into Toshinori's chest. He wrapped his arms around his skinny frame and sobbed. Dad approached, and Toshinori pulled him into the hug. Izuku found himself squished between them. I want to move forward, Toshinori said softly. Together. Izuku was still angry. He was still hurt. He'd still been lied to. He pushed Toshinori back and stepped away from their embrace. He stopped, being cut off by a small sob. I can't. I need some time, he said finally. I can't believe you just didn't tell me. Izuku, Toshinori began again. Stop, just. He shook his head. Stop. I gotta go. He turned and fled the office. Izuku, wait, his father called. He didn't look back. Izuku returned to the dorms later, feeling exhausted. He felt like he'd been thrown through a garbage disposal. His face hurt, his body hurt. He was still so angry. Toshinori had lied to him. His father had lied to him. He was sick of it. He didn't stop to say hello to anyone, stomping up the stairs to his own dorm room. He slammed the door behind him. He He walked over to his sunshine yellow bed. The one he'd never even slept in. He grabbed a pillow and screamed into it. His body was shaking. He couldn't calm down. His mind was racing. The girl. The league. Tuya. Chisaki. Shihasakai. Togata. Naitai. Toshinori. Dead. Death. Panic ran through his veins. He grabbed his head, holding it between his knees as he sat on the ground. He needed to calm down. Tears were in his eyes again. He needed to calm down. Toshinori said he was supposed to die at Kamino. But there was still a chance he'd die. Dad would be alone again. He needed to calm down. He really needed to see that therapist. When was his first appointment again? The therapist they wanted, the one with the secret-keeping quirk, was booked up. It would still be a few weeks before Izuku was able to get in with her, but they did have a date. He needed to calm down. Izuku stood and walked over to his desk. He opened the drawer and pulled out a small sandwich bag. It contained his last 2 cigarettes. He pulled one from the bag. A knock came from the door. Izuku, Shoto called, "Are you in there?" Siro said he saw you come up here. Yeah, Izuku said softly. He put the bag back in the drawer. Come in. He still held one of the cigarettes in his hand. Oh, Shoto said, I thought you quit. His eyes were on the cigarette. He nodded. I did. Dad gave me 2 from the pack. Said I could do whatever I wanted with them. Today is just too fucking much and I need to calm down, so if you don't mind I just... He sighed. Sorry. Shoto crossed the room and opened the balcony door. Come on, he said, and led Izuku outside. He closed the door behind them. Go ahead, he said, and lit the cigarette for him. Izuku lifted it to his lips and took a long drag. Bliss. Relief rolled through his body at once. Fuck, that's good, he mumbled as he blew the smoke out of his mouth. Do you want to talk about it? Shoto asked, leaning on the railing. And he began, but once he and Shoto made eye contact it was like it was pouring out of him. Toshinori might die. Sir Naitai foresaw his death. He took another drag and he knew. He's known for 6 years, and he never told me. My dad knew. They both kept it from me. Shoto frowned, but then an odd look settled on his face. Lying seems to be a family pastime for you guys. What's that supposed to mean? Izuku asked. It means what it sounds like. I love you very much, Izuku, but you lie a lot. So does your dad. So does Yagi-san, he continued. It's hard to know if anything any of you say is true sometimes. His face was blank. So I'm not surprised they were lying to you. Izuku gaped at him. Sure, Izuku had kept things in the past. But he only lied when it was necessary. That's not a fair comparison, Shoto, he said. I lied about my quirk to protect myself. I lied about my dad to protect him. What about lying about the smoking? He asked. What about lying about Tuya? What about lying about how you feel, all the time? Anger flared up in Izuku's gut. I lied about the smoking because I knew people would make me stop. Besides, that's a completely different set of circumstances. Totally different levels of betrayal. And you lied about Tuya too, he snapped. As for how I feel, I just don't think it's right to burden others with how I'm feeling. Shoto's face remained that stony mask. It only made Izuku more upset. I'm just saying, it's hypocritical to be mad when you've been lied to, when you lie all the time. You have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, because you don't tell me anything, Shoto snapped back. Izuku, you said you don't want to burden others with your feelings. Am I a burden to you? Was I when I told you about my mother? What? Izuku asked. No. Shoto was never a burden. You needed to talk about that, and I love you, I'm always happy to take on. So do you think I'm incapable of doing the same? Shoto asked. Izuku growled. No. Don't put words in my mouth. He snapped. He took another long drag. He didn't want to waste his cigarette. It's not that you're incapable. It's that you have so much going on. With your dad, and your mom, and the extra lessons. Fuck, Shoto, look at you. You look like you were dragged over barbed wire. The last thing you need is my stupid mess being added onto your plate. I know what I can handle. Shoto yelled. Finally, his mask was breaking. You always do this. You think you're so above it all. Above it all? What the fuck, Shoto? You think you can handle everyone else's problems and swallow your own? But I'm right here. I want to help you. Let me take some of that burden from your shoulders, Izuku. No. Izuku yelled, I'm All Might's successor. I'm going to have to shoulder a hell of a lot more than this someday. I can't rely on other people. I have to get strong enough to handle it, that's all. If I get stronger, you won't have to worry about me. I'm constantly worrying about you. Shoto yelled. Izuku, you went through something terrible, and one breakdown isn't enough to make it go away. I'm worried that you are moving on with this work study too soon after. I'm worried about you, your dad, and now Yagi-san if he's going to die. He grabbed Izuku by the shoulders. I'm so deeply in love with you, I'll never stop worrying. Izuku glared up at him. He rubbed the cigarette out on the wall behind him and dropped the butt. I don't want to be worried about. I want people to know I'll be fine. If you didn't want me to worry about you, you shouldn't have kissed me in that hospital. You shouldn't have tried so hard to make me use my fireside. You should have just beaten me at the sports festival like you easily could have. And he grabbed Shoto by the front of the shirt and kissed him. Izuku was just so angry. He was angry that everything was out of control. He was angry at himself. He was hurting Shoto. Shoto, beautiful perfect Shoto. He was also angry at Shoto. He pulled back. Don't ever say I shouldn't have done that. He growled, you needed it. I needed it. He said, Shoto, if I didn't have you then. It was Shoto's turn to cut him off. Another searing kiss. His cold tongue invaded Izuku's lips and he found his knees begin to buckle. His hands moved into Shoto's hair and pulled the ponytail out, then he grabbed fistfuls of silky locks and tugged. Shoto groaned against his mouth, lifting him up and slamming him into the wall. Izuku eagerly wrapped his legs around his waist. Fight. 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 This was a fight. One for all activated, his legs crushing Shoto to him. Shoto gasped but rolled his hips into him. His hands, one searing hot resting on his hip, the other freezing cold tugging his hair. All the blood rushed south as he popped the fastest boner of his life. He felt like he was melting. He wanted this. He never wanted to be anywhere else but in this spot floating on the wall, the harsh texture of the building digging into his back. He wanted Shoto inside him. Or to be inside Shoto. It didn't matter. They needed to fuck, right now. They both pulled back, a thin line of drool connecting their lips. Shoto rested his forehead against Izuku's. So. He panted, what were you saying? Bed, Izuku begged, take me to bed right now. Izuku had never been so turned on in his life. Shoto, it seemed, was dazed. He stared at Izuku as if he had three heads. Fine, he said and dropped to the ground. He pushed Shoto back from the wall before grabbing him and hoisting him over his shoulder easily. He slid the door open and stepped back into his room. I don't have lube, he said, that's in your room. Shoto leaned up, his legs kicking slightly. Sounds like we have to go to my room then, he said, his voice deeper than normal. You should put me down. People will talk if they see you carrying me to the 5th floor like a caveman. Izuku practically kicked the door open out into the hall. Let them. All right, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below and check out the video or playlist on the screen for more content from me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.